this lesson, you're going to learn English with the news. We're going to read a news article together so you can learn advanced vocabulary, advanced grammar, and even correct pronunciation. Let's get started. Welcome to our article. We're talking about Donald Trump and his recent legal troubles. Let me read the headline. Trump indictment, a simple guide to what it means. First, let's talk about this word. Notice the pronunciation. Indictment, indictment, indictment. The spelling and the pronunciation are quite different. Now, indictment, this is a legal term. So if you're not a lawyer, even in your own native language, you might not know what this means. An indictment is the act of making a formal statement accusing someone of something. So that means that Donald Trump has been formally accused, which means they can now bring charges against him and he must go to court and prove that he's innocent. This is the noun form. You may frequently hear the verb form as well. So the verb is to indict, pronunciation, indict, indict, to indict. So as an example, he was indicted on drug charges. Now, this is not what Donald Trump was indicted of. So let's find out what the charges are. Former U.S. President Donald Trump is being charged with a crime in relation to a payment he made to a porn star named Stormy Daniels. So we could say Trump was indicted on charges related to a payment he made to the porn star. So this is how we could use our verb indicted. So in this case, notice it's in the passive, to be indicted. Trump was indicted. I could say the U.S. government indicted Trump. So that would be the subject doing the action, but here Trump is receiving the action. Notice in my example how I used related to instead of in relation to. There's no reason why I did that. They mean exactly the same thing. This is just the one that I use more commonly in my vocabulary, but you could replace this with in relation to, and then whatever it is, then you have the noun. Mr. Trump's first court appearance will take place on Tuesday. So a court appearance, this is from the word to appear, of course. So that's when Trump must appear in court. He's expected to be released on bail. So again, bail, this is another legal term. Bail is when you pay money in order to make sure you actually attend the court proceedings. So Trump is charged. He won't go to jail because he paid bail, which might be $100,000, $1 million. I have no idea how much it will be. And he's paying that money to make sure that he will appear in court. If you don't make bail or you don't have the money to pay for bail, you have to wait in jail until your court appearance. So he was released on bail. This is a legal term. Here's the summary of bail. Now, don't worry about writing this down because I prepared a free lesson PDF. So you can look in the description or the comment section for the link to download the free lesson PDF. Let's continue on. What is Trump accused of? Stormy Daniels says she had an affair with Mr. Trump in 2006. So this happened quite a long time ago, which he has always denied. So when you deny something, you say, I didn't do it. Let me show you an example sentence because there's something important grammatically you need to know. Trump denies having an affair with Stormy Daniels. What do you notice about this sentence? Well, you might notice we have our gerund verb, have, and then ing, having. He denies having. Now, I put this in the present simple because he is still denying it now. I could also put it in the past to say when it happened in 2006 or even yesterday, Trump denied it. But I put it in the present simple to suggest that he still denies it. Trump denies having an affair with Stormy Daniels. So our verb deny is a gerund verb, which means the verb that comes after it is in the ing form. Let's continue on. I'll just highlight this for you so you remember it. And remember, the verb deny means you say, I didn't do it. So someone accuses you of something. Did you eat the last piece of cake? And then you can say, no, I didn't do it. I deny eating the last piece of cake. Okay. In 2016, she tried to sell her account of what happened to the media. So her account of what happened, this is just her story. She is sharing her story, but she wanted to be paid. She tried to sell it. So she approached the media, let's just say CNN, and said, I'll share my story with you and you can print it if you pay me. So that's sell her account of what happened. This is just her story. Her story. Her story. So you might go to a meeting or go to a conference and then summarize what happened. But you could say, that's my account of what happened. That's your interpretation of what happened. So you can say, that's my account of what happened at the conference. So maybe you thought the conference was a huge success, but your colleague also went to the conference and thought it wasn't very good. You could say, well, that's my account of the conference. That's my story. That's my personal interpretation of it. Mr. Trump's lawyer, Michael Cohen, paid her $130,000 to keep quiet. So to not sell her story to the media. That kind of payment is called hush money. So they just defined what this means in a casual way. It's called hush money. Hush, you might be wondering, what does hush mean? Hush is another way of saying quiet. So let's say your kids are being really noisy. You can say hush, which is another way of saying quiet. It's not as common, to be honest. I would say just quiet is more common, but it is another way of saying quiet. So you could think of it as quiet money. But here's the thing. When we have expressions, you can't just replace one part of the expression for a different word, even if it means the same thing. So quiet money, it doesn't make any sense because the expression is hush money. Okay? It's just an expression. Let's continue. So that is not illegal. Very interesting. What they're saying, that is paying someone money in order to be quiet. Hush money is not illegal. So let's say you know that I did something wrong, and then I say, well, I'll give you $1 million if you don't tell anyone. Apparently that isn't illegal. So that is not illegal, but Mr. Trump is accused of falsifying his business records. So falsifying is just the verb form of making false. That would be the literal translation, but we wouldn't say that. So when you make something false, which means not true, inaccurate, that is falsifying. That's the verb form. Now notice it's in the ing as well. And that's because we have our preposition and the gerund verb follows the preposition. So you can notice here, you can accuse someone of something, and then that something is going to be in the gerund form. So it is illegal to say on your taxes that you paid this money for legal fees when in fact it was for something totally different, because he might be taxed differently for legal fees. So he could probably deduct that from his income, which means he probably didn't pay taxes on this $130,000, which is probably the issue. This is the illegal part of it, that he's trying to avoid paying taxes by saying it was a legal fee when it wasn't a legal fee. It was hush money, right? So let's continue on. Is Trump going to jail if found guilty? Okay. Now, I think most students know this, but you can say jail or prison interchangeably. There's no difference between them. Prison, jail, exactly the same thing. It's the location where you go if you are found guilty of a crime. You go to jail, you go to prison. And notice the verb, go to jail, go to prison. If you've ever played Monopoly, you know that expression, go to jail. I don't know if they call it jail or prison in Monopoly. I think they call it jail, right? But it's the same word. The most likely outcome, so the outcome is what happens. So the most likely end to this story is what? At the end of this legal process is a fine. So the most likely outcome, what's going to happen, is that Trump will pay a fine. Let's talk about a fine. This is a noun, and it's an amount of money paid as punishment for breaking a rule or law. Most of us are familiar with this with parking, or something to do with driving a car. If you park in a location and then you get a ticket on your windshield and there's, oh man, I got a ticket. And then you have to pay a fine, and that's your punishment for not parking in the right location. Of course, there are many other fines, but the most common one, I think, is a parking ticket. Have you ever gotten a parking ticket? Well, I have, obviously, because I think everybody has gotten a parking ticket at some time in their life. Okay, so that's the most likely outcome. What will happen? He'll have to pay a fine, but there is also a chance he could be sent to prison. So we're using the verb sent, but you could also just change this with the verb go. He could go to prison. Instead of be sent, he could go to prison. When you're sent to prison, it just really emphasizes that it's not in your control, that it's not your choice. But it's pretty silly because obviously nobody would choose to go to prison. So you can simply use go to prison for a maximum of 4 years. That's the maximum. It doesn't mean he's going to go to prison for 4 years. That's just the upper limit of what's possible. But more likely, they say the most likely outcome is the fine. So he'll have to pay some amount of money. Can Trump still run for president? So notice our verb here, you run for a political office, a political appointment, and in this case, president, but you could run for mayor, or you could run for city council, for example. So it doesn't have to be president, and you run for it. So can he still run for president? Yes. There's nothing in the U.S. Constitution to prevent Mr. Trump from continuing his election campaign. Now he is being charged. Okay, so instead of charged, remember we could use our term indicted. Now that he's being indicted, same thing. Indicted. And remember that pronunciation, indicted. It doesn't say this in the article, but I learned that Trump is the first US president in history to be indicted. So he'll go down in history. Okay, let's continue on. Even if he was imprisoned, to be imprisoned, this is just another way of saying even if he goes to jail. Okay, you could say even if he goes to jail, when you're imprisoned, it means you're in jail. It's just another way. But in this case, with the word imprisoned, we never change it to jailed, for example. Because remember I told you, you can use the word jail or prison, but we have this one specific word, imprison. But in this case, it means go to jail or go to prison, but you must use the word prison in this specific word. He could theoretically still run for president and win an election. Now, they're saying theoretically because this has not happened. He hasn't been imprisoned. He hasn't been sent to jail. He hasn't gone to jail. So it's a theoretical situation. It's a situation that right now is not real. But the possibility is there. So I could say, for example, theoretically, I could run for prime minister. I actually can't run for president because I'm not a US citizen. I'm a Canadian citizen. And our leader is called prime minister. But theoretically, I could run for prime minister. So it's saying like the possibility exists. But am I going to do it? No. But theoretically, I could. So we use this a lot to suggest like it's a hypothetical situation. The possibility is there, but it doesn't mean I'm going to, or there's even any chance of it, even though the possibility is there. Wasn't Trump investigated before? Yes. He faces a number of criminal investigations. Notice our verb tense is in the present simple, which tells me that he still faces criminal investigations. Because if it were in the past simple, he faced, it would mean that he's no longer facing them now. It's a completed action in the past, but he is not being accused of them anymore. But because they used it in the present simple, it means he could still get in trouble for these other criminal investigations. So it's not just this one issue. There's the possibility, theoretically, he could be indicted for other issues as well, because he faces a number of criminal investigations. They are continuing, and we will hear more about them in the months ahead. So in the months ahead is a future time reference. You could also say in the months to come, Both of these are quite common. I like ahead, in the months ahead. And then you can change your time reference to in the years ahead, in the weeks ahead, in the days ahead, even something like the hours. It doesn't have to be a long period of time, in the hours ahead. And that is the end of our article. So what I'll do now is I'll go to the top and I'll read the article in full. And this time you can focus on my pronunciation and practice along with my pronunciation. Let's do that now. Trump indictment, a simple guide to what it means. Former U.S. President Donald Trump is being charged with the crime in relation to a payment he made to a porn star named Stormy Daniels. Mr. Trump's first court appearance will take place on Tuesday. He is expected to be released on bail. What is Trump accused of? Stormy Daniels says she had an affair with Mr. Trump in 2006, which he has always denied. In 2016, she tried to sell her account of what happened to the media. Mr. Trump's lawyer, Michael Cohen, paid her $130,000 to keep quiet. That kind of payment is called hush money. That is not illegal, but Mr. Trump is accused of falsifying his business records by saying the payment was for legal fees. Is Trump going to jail if found guilty? The most likely outcome at the end of this legal process is a fine, but there is also a chance he could be sent to prison for a maximum of 4 years. Can Trump still run for president? Yes, there's nothing in the U.S. Constitution to prevent Mr. Trump from continuing his election campaign now he is being charged. Even if he was imprisoned, he could theoretically still run for president and win an election. Wasn't Trump investigated before? Yes, he faces a number of criminal investigations. They are continuing, and we will hear more about them in the months ahead.
And I highly recommend you watch this lesson next. I know you're going to love it. And make sure you get your free speaking guide where I share 6 tips on how to speak English fluently and confidently. You can get it from my website right here. So now get started with your next lesson.